Ladies and gentlemen, the man, the myth, the legend himself, the man with the master plan, Carter Bryant. Are you wearing a Christmas shirt?
I am. I'm wearing a Larry David. Have yourself a pretty good Christmas. Huh? Huh? Huh?
It's about to be July. Like, my dog, are you like legitimately ready for Christmas? Is that what's going on here?
I am because I actually went on a run today and I look like a deformed walrus out there on those roads. And it is amazing like how much you lose it once you get to your mid 30s. You have nothing left in the tank after just a few miles. So I first off, I'll say this. I'm glad you're in better health. You look
Thank you. Thank you.
absolutely fantastic, man.
Hey, I was scaring the shit out of you, wasn't I? I was like, Carter, this is worse than 2012 in January, man. It was, though.
Dude, you I could just hear it, right? Because you and I talk like 2 or 3 times a week on the phone. We text pretty much every day. I was like, man, just call me if you want to just talk ball, whatever. He's like, dude, I could barely breathe right now.
I
Oh,
just
man.
got done with some very physical activities, Carter.
Yeah, breathing when you have that could be very physical, and it's funny, I mean, it's not funny, but it's crazy now that like so many people are getting it again and again and again. So that's always a good thing, man. And yeah, I'm sorry for my anti-walrus comment. Big game boomer,
It's in the building.
dude.
It's in the building.
The list maker is here. I
Listen,
love it, man. The
hey,
most
he
obscure,
does- one
most
thing he does, he gets college football riled up on a random ass Tuesday.
and his rankings are scientific. People don't understand. Like it's like an Albert Einstein E equals MC square, Michael Caine on Inception
Oh,
chalkboard
stop.
equations. That his gets down to a science. But look, say hi to Chris and our girl Danny is making a cross country trip back to Georgia. Shout out to you.
Okay.
Please tell Darren Reed to commit to LSU. We need some defensive linemen after this next crop goes to the NFL. But Blake, how are you, man? How's the show been going?
Going good, but MTN PKR0918, the most Star Wars name of all time, just said, don't insult walruses like that. So I don't.
Well, I mean, look, a walrus could run a faster 40 than me right now. That's all I gotta say.
Jesus.
But
Jeez.
but
All
yeah,
right. Well, I got to ask you because, look, you've been in the media for a long time. And look, I'll hold no bones about myself, but I did not learn and grow up or get training before I started this podcast, right? I turn on the camera. I've learned a lot, and you have been a guide for me in this process. I am calling with today's news from Sharon Lewis. And I know that you don't like talking about this kind of stuff, but I think it's very relevant for LSU athletics. But the case just got dropped. And not only dropped, but thrown out. Am I crazy to believe that the USA Today deserves to maybe not an apology, but a redaction about some of the claims that they made it against LSU? Am I going crazy?
no, I mean, look, I haven't had a chance to read that. Like, it just broke, right?
About 45 minutes ago, yeah.
So I haven't been able to actually even read the story. What was it? I see
In a nutshell, she can provide zero evidence.
Right. So I will say this, and this is someone that's actually a lawyer that actually is in the LSU media sphere, and I reached out to him about it. I'm not going to reveal his name, but because he doesn't really do much LSU media stuff, so I reached out to him, and he knows a lot more about like cases such as this one. And he said that the Sharon Lewis situation was one of the most bizarre things he's ever seen, as far as like the actual lawsuits that were happening surrounding her. And I was like, why is that? He was like, well, there's just a lot there, and she's still, at the time, still working for the university. So, there was a lot of bizarre aspects of it. So once again, I haven't been able to read, what just came out. But if everything is dropped, I'm not like just totally shocked, but I'm not like as well versed. You've been covering it a lot closer than I have. I'm not as well versed as like what just was said or broken by whoever actually wrote the story. I'm looking now. Let's see. Yeah, so I just don't know as much as you as far as like what happened because I was running before I actually came here. So I'm sorry.
Basically, in a nutshell, we'll move on. The claims that the USA Today made with Sharon Lewis got dropped, all of them.
Interesting.
Like, and not only dropped, but thrown out, which is a huge difference if you talk to any attorney. That not only are they not dropping them, they're not even allowing them in the courtroom.
That's crazy.
So,
that is wild. But yeah, so as far as like that guy's opinion, he said, Carter, this isn't going to go anywhere, and I trusted him from the get go. And you know, it is what it is. Now, obviously, there's other stories around that time period that still have yet to get sorted out, but this was pretty crazy. That is pretty wild that all that happened.
All right, so now let's get on the field because it's where I want to spend most of my time with you, Carter. I want to talk quarterbacks.
Yeah, let's do it.
Jayden Daniels goes out to California, starts working out with the Palmers. Joe Burrow, before minicamp start, is out there with him. Garrett Nussmeier is with Trent Dilfer and the boys at the Elite 11, and now Miles Brennan is going to the Manning Passing Academy. A lot of people asked me today, for whatever reason, how much stock do I buy in for Miles Brennan going to work out for the Mannings? I put zero stock into it. I think, but it does say something, though, of one quarterback that LSU will have. Miles Brennan is the one, but I think that there are some different things there. To start off here with the quarterbacks, is that a sign of anything that LSU is kind of putting forth Miles Brennan to go to the Manning Passing Academy?
No, not really. I mean, all three of them are working out, right? And I think, you know, for me, as far as the quarterback battle is concerned, all we really know is Garrett Nussmeier helped himself out more than the other guys, right? Because he wasn't in the rational conversation to start. When Jayden Daniels transferred, there were a lot of LSU bloggers and YouTubers and whatnot that said Garrett Nussmeier is for sure going to transfer. He is for sure out of there. He's never going to see it down. And all this kid did was put his head down and really ball out for the most part during spring.
Got to give it to him.
There's no other way around it. Like, yes, the spring game, I have some skepticisms about his performance, but he was the best quarterback in that game. So just because Miles Brennan is going to the passing academy that is more local and more known, just based on intel that I've received, Jayden Daniels is putting in work, and Garrett Nussmeier is also putting in work to potentially be the guy. So I think all three of them still have a very good shot of being the guy when it comes to it. And I'm going to just reiterate what I said last time I was on here. For some weird reason in my gut, I think Miles Brennan is going to be the guy that trots out there day one. That's not who I would personally prefer, but for some reason, just in my gut, it's just telling me Miles is going to be that guy.
Okay, expound on that. Why does your gut tell you that?
I have no idea why, Blake, other than this is his final year, and the fact that Jayden has a little bit more flexibility, and this is Miles' final go. He has 1 year to play one. I just think for some reason he's going to be that guy. Now, I have no personal intel. Everyone tells you this is still going to be a 3-horse race going into next year. I thought what Kayshawn said about Garrett Nussmeier was very fascinating, and how the question was asked to Kayshawn. The fact that he shared what he shared about Garrett Nussmeier really told me a lot about how not only Kayshawn, but a lot of people feel about Garrett Nussmeier. There are a lot of players that love this guy. Not really a shock. All I ask people to do is just go rewatch the last couple of spring games and just watch, full games. And you'll see so many times Garrett Nussmeier cheering up his teammates, patting them on the back.
He's got the locker room now. Kids like him.
Yes, he is very involved, even when he wasn't playing. And I understand there's a lot of us that have a lot of strong opinions of how that bowl situation played out. I still believe he should have played, but that's in the past, right? outside of that, which I still don't think that really angered anyone that truly matters in that locker room, he's loved. He is truly universally loved. I've had players tell me that personally, and I doubt that is not the case. Now, it's not to say the other quarterbacks aren't, but it is very interesting how many times I've been just told that Garrett Nussmeier has this kind of swagger and intangibles about him.
All three quarterbacks, and I'm going to exclude Walker Howard for a moment. All three of them scare the bejesus out of me in one specific area. Now, none of them are the same. None of them are the same. I worry about Jayden Daniels' intermediate passing game. Okay, like I legitimately worry about it. Do I think his issues are easier to clean up at the current moment? Yes. I think that considering we've seen guys like Lamar who are more of a runner at times do what Lamar's done, I think from a throwing aspect, those things are easier compared to the other two. Number one, Miles Brennan, the injury history, Carter, it worries the bejesus out of me. Can he take a hit? He's a little immobile, actually a lot of immobile at times. Can he make quick decisions? Can he just get the ball out to the flat and get 7? Or does he want to hit the big play every time? And then Garrett Nussmeier. Carter, when I was watching the spring games over again when I had COVID last week, there were 4 throws. And I'm going to include the Jeray Jenkins drop, okay? There's no reason he should have made that throw in man-to-man coverage. Okay, Jay Ward breaks off of that because he's reading Garrett Nussmeier's eyes, and which, quite honestly, Carter, worries me because there were 3 other times that balls should have been intercepted that were dropped. Now, I get the woulda, coulda, shoulda game. I don't know where Brian Kelly goes from here, and I think it is a 3-person race. However, in this scenario, because you dive deeper into the analytics than I do. Historically, though, what quarterback normally trots out there, if that makes sense?
Yeah, and honestly, it's Jayden, right? Because he's the most experienced. Normally, the more experienced quarterbacks are the ones that play, right? That's, it's just true. He has far more experience than Miles Brennan. And I know a lot of people say, well, that wasn't in the SEC. Well, Jayden played tougher defenses than Miles played when he actually started, right?
I try to tell people that, Carter, but
yeah. I mean, and plus he's just far more experienced. You have 3 years of starters experience versus 3 games of starters experience. So that's, to me, goes a long way, especially if you're just trying to trot out there and find a way to win game 1. Jayden Daniels is probably going to be the most comfortable when it comes to just being that guy. Now, that's not to say Garrett Nussmeier wouldn't just be comfortable day 1. It also doesn't say the same thing about Miles Brennan as well. But I go back to this about Jayden Daniels. A lot of things began to disintegrate for him mechanically when their season was lost. And I cannot say this enough. Stephen Godfrey just wrote about this recently. He is very well connected. Arizona State is a dumpster fire. It's a dumpster fire of a program. Herm really set that thing on fire with the violations. I have to say, as far as off-field chaos, and a lot of this is on Jayden. He'd probably tell you this as well. He missed a lot of open throws. He had, a really bad game versus USC. They were still able to win it, but there was a lot of mechanically, and Tim probably knows this. He watched a USC game. Arizona State was still able to win, but Daniels played bad, and they were at home. And there was a lot of things against the Oregon State game towards the end for Jayden Daniels. But what was really fascinating, Blake, was when they were still a 1-loss team, he played fine. Didn't turn the football over. Did he have a few mechanical issues in those games? Yes. But a lot of it happened to be his offensive lineman committing a false start penalty, or they would commit a holding penalty on a drive when they would get things going. They shot themselves in the foot more than any other team, and that's not a whole lot there's not a whole lot Jayden could really do about that. If you're, driving down the field and there's another holding call, then it's 1st and 20, take a sack. Now it's 2nd and 30. There was a lot of that last year with him. So 50% I would say is on him, but 50% was on his circumstances. And that's the thing. Brian Kelly's teams don't shoot themselves in the foot. They just don't do it. That has been a consistent trait, and why he's won a lot of games at Notre Dame is that his teams have done a lot to not lose him, if that makes sense.
If that's the case, then I think it's Miles. Okay? Because there were thousands of times during the spring when Bryant let me not break news, but break news. There were practices where they were yelling at Miles to let it rip. Okay, I think that there were a lot of times where he was too conservative. Like, hey, I can win the job by throwing it to I'm hypothetically to throwing it to Brian Thomas or Kayshawn and getting away with it. Because and look, he threw it to the backs most out of the backfield than anybody. Carter, I think he was 6 yards per attempt in that spring game, which quite honestly, dink and dunk. And I didn't want to see that. I would wanted to see him rip it downfield because you had a lot to go. But if that's the case, then I think Miles can make a case, but we'll see. Let me ask you this, though. I think that the running game, and we continue to talk running backs.
Let's do it. I love it.
Carter, the more and more I look into it, there's two big things that I think that LSU fans better prepare themselves for. I think this offensive line, listen to me, I think this offensive line could be top 3 in the SEC. Not based off of talent, based off of schematics. Carter, in the middle of the second quarter, they dominated that defensive line. Oh, well, Blake, the defensive line got winded. Well, what the shit did the offense? I've never understood that argument. Well, the offensive line can't get tired. Who says who? I'm still fat as a walrus too. That don't mean I don't get. So let me ask you this: from what we saw in the domination up front, especially as the game went on, everybody looks at the sacks. I'm looking at the running game. Carter, I mean, have you seen an offensive line at LSU be that physical in a while?
Yeah, look. All next week, we're doing running back week next week, and every video is going to be about running backs, right? I went and I looked at every carry that Armani Goodwin's had in his LSU career, including the spring game. He had a lot of improvements just watching in that spring game. Obviously, I've shared this, once again, I think a few weeks ago on your channel. John Emery is going to be fine. Every historical data point in the modern era proves of John Emery being, at the very least, a good back. If not, that would be one of the most mind-blowing non-factors in the history of LSU recruiting. He's going to be okay, right? But every analytic deep dive that has tackled this subject at the NFL, and I think this is kind of true in college, probably not so much in the NFL, though. The blockers in your scheme is always more important than the running back. It always has been. It always will be. But we grew up thinking it was the running back that was gaining all the yards, which he was. But a lot more of it is on your offensive line and on your scheme. What's going to be very interesting, Blake, is last year, Cincinnati was a team that didn't use play action a lot. They did some RPO stuff, but their play action percentage was actually a little bit lower relative to a lot of schools.
He had was Spider 2Y Banana. Continue.
Yeah. So what's going to be interesting is how much play action is LSU going to use last year. As mediocre I think Max Johnson is, I do think they put too much on his plate. I do think play action is going to be used potentially more next year. And Cincinnati last year just, once again, didn't use play action a whole lot. And what's really fascinating is play action still works when the running game isn't good. Now it works better if you have a good running game, but play action fakes still work if you don't have a running game. So what I think you'll see a lot more of next year with the LSU offense is play action, is RPOs, is more half field read kind of stuff. Because whichever the quarterback is going to be, none of them is a proven commodity, and they want to make things as easy as they possibly can, not only for the quarterback, but for the offensive line.
When you were talking about Jayden Daniels earlier, I almost interrupted you, but I didn't. I was going to say, because you talk about Herm the dumpster fire at Arizona State and guys leaving, guys injured, guys making boneheaded decisions. And I'm like, damn, that sounds like LSU. I mean, who are you talking about? Arizona State and Jayden Daniels? You're talking about Max Johnson and LSU.
Yeah.
I digress. Carter, then that, okay, and this is why this is so difficult. If they're trying to do that, then Miles is fourth on the depth chart. Okay, because in today's society, a play action isn't always a play action. Okay, it's not like, NCAA 14 where you're going to I formation and you got literally spider 2 wide banana, but it is going to gear to Garrett or Jayden. I don't, for whatever it is, and maybe you can talk me off the ledge here. Are we a quarterback away from a New Year's Six bowl? Like, that's what most people tend to believe because you do have the pieces. But Carter, I got to say this. Then I flip over to the other side. Where's the production? You can only throw it to Kayshawn so many times. Okay, Emmanuel Forbes. So did you see the Kayshawn Boutte thing today? When Emmanuel Forbes from Mississippi State was lined up against Kayshawn Boutte, he didn't have a catch. So
yeah, a good corner, yeah.
Right. So you can only throw it to that man so many times. It's kind of like I feel like it's either hit or everything or nothing with this team a little bit, right? Like,
yeah,
they have so much talent. Are they going to be good? Are they going to live up to the talent, or are they not?
Yeah. So look, I'm a little bit higher on Jack Besh. I think he's really special. I really do. Like, I think he low key some all SEC potential. Just a lot of what he did last year, not only as a receiver, but as a blocker, I think he's going to take another step. I don't think he hit a ceiling. I really don't. I think he's going to have a bigger year. And obviously, Brian Kelly is really high on Jack Besh. I believe he recruited him, when he was in high school. So I'm a big Jack Besh believer. And look, I know we haven't talked a whole lot about the defensive side of the football. What I think one thing we haven't talked a whole lot about, Blake, and we did actually when Matt House was hired, is these games are going to get chaotic. You're going to be playing this year a lot of teams that play really, really, really fast. This is going to be, and I know as LSU fans, we're so used to these long drawn out CBS 26-minute commercial break kind of games. All right. And we're so conditioned to those kind of slug them out, drag them out kind of games. I think LSU is going to play a lot of teams this year that play at hyper speed. You're going to play Tennessee this year. They play really fast. Mississippi State, Bama, Ole Miss last year, all three of them were top 15 in all of college football when it comes to plays per game. So you look at Matt House historically, defensively as a defensive coordinator, he played with slower paced offensive coordinators. And Mike Dimbrock in Cincinnati, they played at a slower play per game pace as well. So that's going to be something that's going to be so fascinating next year as an LSU football fan, because you're also going to play some slower pro style kind of teams. I know Billy Napier is going to want to slow it down at Florida. Just how different a lot of these teams play is going to be very key for not only LSU, but just the entire SEC, because there's so many good quarterbacks and offenses.
Are you worried about the defense?
A little. I mean, look.
Where at?
All three levels, honestly. Like, look, the secondary, I'm actually the most comfortable about the secondary right now. I really am. Yeah, I really am. The defensive line is obviously really, really good. You have 3 first-rounders on that defensive line, right? If you include the Jack linebacker, Ojolari, Mason Smith, Ali Gay. Mason Smith, Jaquelin Roy. And Ali Gay has obviously first-round traits. I do think kind of what you mentioned a minute ago, Blake, the run fitting. It's different run fitting in a 3-4 than it is a 4-3. And now with how well running backs read a pulling guards and counter, how you play your run fits is so key, right? We tend to think, okay, perfect example. Now, this is a very extreme example because I'm about to say and talk about the greatest defensive line of all time, which was Georgia's last year. Make a strong case, best defensive line ever. 03 LSU, 2016 Bama, 2018 Clemson. Those would be the other three. But Georgia, I mean, just look at the draft. I mean, they were amazing. They weren't penetrators. They played together. They played their role. They were all high IQ, really well coached football players, right? What's going to be different next year, and LSU has that as well, right? Every defensive lineman interviews well. They're all awesome when it comes to that. But under Ed Orgeron, the defensive line was taught to shoot gaps, try your best to get in the backfield, and make as many tackles for loss as you possibly can. In a 3-4, it's a little bit different. And obviously, it comes down to how you're coached, if you're being taught to, or if you're being told to shoot gaps or whatnot. It is a little bit different now with run fitting. And if you want to play more too high shell, your front has to play together more often than not.
You're going to be in deep trouble.
Yes, because they're just going to gash you, right? We tend to think of Lane Kiffin as this passing offense. No, they run you to death, right?
Right.
They gash you in the running game. That was how they won a lot of their football games last year. So that's going to be different as well. Not necessarily that the defensive line isn't talented. LSU's probably got the best defensive line in the SEC, not named Bama at this point. It's how you play that's going to be very different because it's a lot more mental defensive line play now because these running backs are so good at cutting back now. These running schemes are so sophisticated now that you have to really play together. Go back and watch Georgia. That defensive line was so good at just playing together. Now, they were special, otherworldly talents everywhere, but they played as a team. And it takes a while to build that chemistry in your run fits up front, and then that gets into the linebackers. Mike Jones and Greg Penn had really good spring games. They really work well together. That's probably going to be your starting linebacker core next year. And guess what? They're AYS guests, so I'm going to show them some love as well.
Damn right they are.
But it makes their jobs a lot easier if the guys up front are playing together. And I think with Tank, Mason, Jacobian, Tank, Mason, Jaquelin, and everyone up front, they definitely have the bodies to do it. It just takes a while to get used to compared to games last year where you were told, hey, just run upfield, run yourself out of the play. Doesn't matter where you go. And that's where UCLA killed us. That's where obviously Ole Miss destroyed us. And we lost games because of that very concept. Kentucky is another example of that.
Yeah, and I'm worried about them in the interior a little.
A little. Now, that's not me saying that they aren't talented. Obviously, Jamar Cain's going
to they are.
Yeah.
But Carter, I mean, Draymond Shorts and Miles Frazier, and for God bless his soul, Charles Turner have no business whatsoever. When you – Carter, I get you're in a base defense. I get it.
Yeah.
There's no reason to give up 307 rushing yards. Zero. I don't give two shits that it's a spring game. Now, Can they fix it? Did you get it out of your system? Were you trying to play whatever? Fine. We'll find out against Florida State, but it definitely worries me. One last thing I want to get, and then I'll get out of here. You said DBs was the unit that doesn't work, that worries you the least. I'll say this. I've come around on that. I was very skeptical of them, especially before Seven Banks got here. Okay, I think Seven Banks, when healthy, obviously per Kuiper and McShay agree a top 25 player in next year's draft. Carter, you just got so many old guys in that DB room. Fouché, Brooks, Bernard Converse, Banks, Ward. Did I say Fouché? Whatever books. So you got 6 seniors that will be starting or rotating in starting. Carter, that's a lot of experience, dog.
Yeah.
I mean, that gets me more than their talent alone. But what sells it for you in the DB room?
Yeah, there are a lot of guys that have played a lot of football, right? Shout out to Golden Boot. I listened to the Tank Guillory interview. It was really good. I can't wait to see.
Killed it.
Yeah. So I want everyone to know that I still like the LSU defensive line, but you saw it in the spring game. There were some concerns, and Rick makes a good point as well. It's the quality depth that's very key,
Agree.
and that kind of ties into defensive back as well, right? Look at the last couple of years, LSU's defensive back room has been the most injured room out of any position group, right? So the most important thing as a defensive back is not get beat deep. And if you do that, you are going to be just fine, right? The issue was LSU got beat deep a lot. Now, a lot of it had to do with the most basic, simple coverage concepts that still blow my mind to this day. But and Rick brought this up on a stream, I think on your channel or my channel, I don't know. But Jay Ward had a really good spring game. He had a really good spring, right? This was a guy who was an abysmal tackler last year. He pitched a shutout in the spring game. And what's very interesting, Blake, is there were a lot of opportunities for receivers and running backs to make a miss, and they didn't. I mean, it was wide open space, and Ward brought him down every time. And these aren't slouches. These were scholarship guys that should be making defenders miss in the open field. So I don't know if I'm more concerned about the ball carrier or if I'm more concerned about Jay Ward. Maybe that's just smoke and mirrors. But if Jay Ward plays like that, that's really good, right? And that's bodes really well for the LSU secondary.
I'll end it with this one. Oh, not that one. LGZ says, I think our tackling and physicality will be better this year, and I think that's key. And look, Mike Jones Jr., Greg Penn, Chris Hilton, Seven Banks all agree that Jay Ward is the biggest trash talker that they've ever been around.
Oh, interesting.
But you gotta back that up when you're talking that ish now.
And one more thing is sometimes he would get caught up in the emotion of the game, right? Kansas State, that was the case. And, just make the simple play. You don't have to hit the home run, right? Florida Hail Mary, Jay Ward went for the interception. Just knock it down, right? It's those little things, right?
Right.
If you and that's the thing. Brian Kelly, there's a lot of things that Brian Kelly is not the absolute best at. He is one of the absolute best at doing little things that don't kill your football team and lose you games. That's why he's won all these games in a row as a favorite. Now, unfortunately for LSU fans, there's a lot of games where LSU will not be favored. But if you don't kill yourselves, it's amazing. The tiny little mistakes, Blake, it's amazing. Those tiny little errors. Even last year, LSU, when we were giving up a gazillion yards, one or two small little mental mistakes lost LSU some of those football games over the past couple of seasons. So getting those little things right are going to be so key for the Tigers next year.
We can continue to go on and on and on and on.
Let's go.
Bama's the biggest. We got the Golden Boot pod at 8:15.
Oh, let's do it, Golden Boot.
Yes,
we got the whole crew. I like that they did the Father's Day shout outs. That was good. Shout out to all the dads. Shout out to you.
Thank you.
Super dad, dads, stepdads, granddads, great granddads. Shout out to all of you. Keep doing your thing.
Ben woke up yesterday morning and he said, Daddy. And I said, yeah, buddy. He goes, can you listen to this song for me? It's what I want to live my life motto by. I was like, okay, buddy. And I start hearing the jingle. I know it's a Lil Wayne song. It's like, and I be stunting like my daddy. And he's in the corner and I'm like, it's the proudest moment I've ever had in my life. Stunting like my dad. I digress. Carter. We'll see you next week, dog. Thank you so much.
Yeah, let's go. I'm about to eat some
hour LSU. When are you going live again?
I'm going live tomorrow night. I actually, the deep snapper Slade Roy will be joining me tomorrow night at 8 Central. I like that he. You know what's making a comeback? Those snowboard goggles. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Shout out to Johnny Tsunami.
Yeah. So if you go look at the 2023 like top 100 recruits, there's like 3 players whose like 247 profile is the like snowboard goggles.
I want some.
Yeah, and shout out to the Shreveport Card Show. I got stopped a bunch there. I got stopped by an AYS viewer, so that's obviously pretty good. But